Health Improvement Program, CAHN Health Hour. The Caribbean and African Health Network, CAHN, along with its national partners, are incredibly pleased to continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@cahn.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions. Spread the word in our community. CAHN is funded by the National Lottery Community Fund.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all.
Good morning. Okay.
Yeah, great to see you all, and welcome to the Caribbean African Targeted Health Improvement Program, CAHN for short. It's another Saturday morning. We're delighted to have yourselves, and we're also extremely grateful to. Could I encourage people to be on mute unless the Q&A session? So it's great to see you all, and a real delight, to have one of our very own, someone who has been with us right from the journey since May 2020, Dr. Joyce Ameh, who will be presenting this morning, exploring stress management and the menopause. Many of you know the month of March was dedicated to women's health, and it's had a spillover. Welcome to a brand new month, but it was really important we looked at this aspect, in relation to menopause. So welcome everyone once again, and we hope you find the session very informative and engaged. We also have our chair, Dr. Faye Bruce, on the call. And she will be making contributions as well. So welcome everyone. So this program is brought to you by a collaboration, of Black-led organizations. So it's a Caribbean African Health Network that I work with, and one of the directors there. We also have RAFA International Development Agency, Croydon BME Forum, Enfield Caribbean Association, Black Health Initiative, and then the RCCG Royal House in Sheffield. And, whilst we grateful for the partners we have, we want to thank yourselves as well for tuning in from different parts of the country. And just to say, last week it was an exciting one because there was a health festival, an actual in-person one in Enfield, and that went really well. So once again, grateful to all those who turned up and supported, as well as those who did spread the word. I'm going to hand over to our doctor very soon. So Dr. Joyce Ameh is no stranger to CAHN and our partners, and has delivered on this session. She is a GP. She has special interest in lifestyle, women's stuff, and she will tell us a bit more when she introduces herself. So welcome once again. At some point in time or throughout the session, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. This is being live streamed to YouTube and Facebook, and therefore, if you want to pick up on the link from the chat box, or ask people to join on any of our social media channels, then they might be able to follow, on YouTube and Facebook. So welcome everyone once again, and I shall be handing over to our esteemed Dr. Joyce Ameh to do the presentation, and she will be taking questions. So feel free, send direct questions to myself, you can put it in the chat box. Please don't send it directly to Doctor, because it could be a lot and we need to coordinate and facilitate, and we will make sure as many questions are answered as possible. So welcome everyone. Dr. Joyce, extremely grateful once again for you giving your Saturday morning, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Thank you so much. It's actually my pleasure to be here this Saturday morning. And yes, I've been on this platform quite a few times in the last 3 years now. I think it's been since we started this health hour. And today I'm going to be talking about stress in the menopause. I can see that not everybody on this platform is female, but everybody, I believe, will be able to learn something. I'm hoping we'll be able to learn something from this discussion. So once again, thank you, CAHN, for inviting me, and let's see how we get on today. So I'm going to try and share my screen. I hope this works. Let's see. Okay. So this is me. My name is Dr. Joyce Ameh. I am a GP. I also work in the private sector. I've got a cosmetic clinic in South Manchester, and I am a menopause specialist doctor working with the online menopause center. And that was why I thought this would be a good topic for us to discuss, to unpick the many issues that are surrounding the menopause right now. So why are we talking about the menopause? Why is it important that we talk about the menopause now? Well, the truth of the matter is that all women, if they live long enough, will go through the menopause. So all of us on this platform will benefit from this discussion. If you are below 40, it's something that is ahead of you. If you're above 40 but less than 55, you will be in the perimenopause, or you would have gone through the menopause. And most women above the age of 55 would have gone through it. Any man on the platform could learn about the menopause and how to manage it so that they can be a more supportive spouse or boss or brother or partner. So I think learning about the menopause will benefit everybody. And why are we talking about the menopause? You must know there's a lot of talk about menopause now. We had a whole month dedicated to it in CAHN. It's there in the blogs, on social media. Lots of people are talking about menopause now. But all women have always gone through the menopause. It's not new. But the reason why we are talking about it a lot more is, one of the reasons actually, is because of improved life expectancy. In the 1930s, the average Black female would die around the age of 49. She may not have gone through the change by that time. Sometimes we call the menopause the change. Those who are Caucasian, they lived a little bit longer. But now things are a little bit different. So the Black African woman, the average age of death for a Black African woman is 88. The Black Caribbeans are slightly lower, 84, and the white and the mixed ethnic women are 83. So a lot of us will live a lot longer after the change now. So it's important that we can maximize our health during the change so that we can live better lives after the menopause. So what is menopause? What actually is the menopause? The menopause simply means the stopping of menstruation, the pausing of menstruation. So a woman of a reproductive age, she has a bleed, we call it periods, every single month, most months, unless medical reasons or they're pregnant. But there will come a time when your periods will stop, and that's the menopause. The average age in the UK for the menopause is 51, some say 52, but it's in the early 50s. And women can experience symptoms, that's changing symptoms, due to the fluctuations in their hormones for up to 10 years before your periods eventually stop for good. That's the perimenopause. So for 10 years before your periods stop, if your periods stop at 51, you might start experiencing symptoms at 41. That's a long time. And that is the perimenopause. Luckily, severe menopausal symptoms, and they do have quite severe ones, are not common, but all women will experience some symptoms from the change, ranging from quite mild symptoms in majority of women to the more severe ones. So we would say somebody has gone through the change, or we would say somebody has been through the menopause if they have not had a period for 12 consecutive months. So if you've not had a period for 6 months and then you start having periods, you have not gone through the change. So we do say it's 12 consecutive months for the woman who's more than 50. If you're less than 50, it can be up to 2 years. So 2 years of no periods, then we can say you've gone through the change. And the reason why we go through this period, the reason why we go through the menopause is because of reduction in the female hormones. We will talk about that in greater detail later on. But the three major hormones that we're going to be talking about are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. You remember when I talked about the 10 years before the menopause, that's the perimenopause? The symptoms that we get in the perimenopause are due to the fluctuations, the changes in the frequency of the menstrual cycle and in the fluctuations in the quantity and quality of the female sex hormones. That's the estrogen, the progesterone, and testosterone. If you go through the change before the age of 40, they say that you're having premature menopause. And that has quite significant health connotations. Early menopause is if it's between the ages of 40 and 45. But from 45 onwards, any woman can go through the menopause. That's normal for them. So what are the symptoms? Today, we're going to be talking mainly about the mental symptoms, but we won't be complete if we don't talk about some of the physical symptoms that women get during the menopause. And there are lots of physical changes. You might feel hot, we call them hot flushes. It comes out of the blue all of a sudden. You find that your body is aching a lot more than usual. You might find that you're quite dry in the vaginal area. You lose hair. Interestingly, women will find that they lose hair at certain points and then they will gain hair, like on the chin, in other areas. They have a lot of problems with sleeplessness. A lot of people struggle with sleep, struggle getting to sleep, struggle staying asleep, early morning waking, and that causes you to be tired and weak during the day. Because of the fluctuations in your hormones, some women have headaches, palpitations, and interestingly, your periods will change. So they can range from having heavier periods, and for some reason, those of us Black Africans, we tend to get heavier periods during the menopause and or irregular menstrual periods. And we can talk about that later on and the reasons why that is happening. So stress in the menopause is so important. The perimenopause and the menopause, let me remove this. Yeah, the menopause and the perimenopause can have a significant impact on a woman's mental health. Significant impact. Women are aware of the physical symptoms like the hot flushes, the night sweats, but they may be completely unprepared for the changes in their mood and in their emotions. And the symptoms vary widely, from anxiety, low mood, to poor concentration and brain fog. And this can have a significant impact on all aspects of life. If you're forgetting things, if you're having this difficulty with concentration, you might find that you lose confidence in your work. in your relationships with your friends, with your families, and with your colleagues. So it can be quite significant. So what causes it? And forgive me if I start talking a little bit more medical. If you have any questions, I will try and address them at the end of the speech. But I don't think it will be complete if we don't understand why we have these mood disorders and changes in our mental stage during the menopause. So I will go a little bit scientific, but I'm hoping I'm using language that you all understand. So the reason why women have these mood changes and also the physical changes in the menopause is because of the erratic fluctuations of the hormones, especially estrogen, in the perimenopausal period and very low levels of your hormones in the menopausal and postmenopausal period. And if you look at this chart that I'm showing, the orange line is estrogen. You can see before the age of 45, that's quite a high level. Between 45 and 55, can you see how that line is undulating? It's erratic. 1 minute it's high, next minute it's low, then it's high again, it's low again, and then it dips suddenly and drops off. And progesterone, which is the blue line, follows a similar pattern. And it's all those fluctuations in the levels of hormones that cause the symptoms. And if we understand why, what these hormones do to the brain, we can better understand why we're feeling this way in the first place. So we'll talk about estrogen. Estrogen is one of the hormones. It's probably one of the major female hormones. We call them the sex hormones, one of the sex hormones. And it is known to have an anti-anxiety and antidepressant effect. So the fact that you're having levels of estrogen that are going up and going down, if the levels are down, you might feel low, levels go up, you might pick up, but it fluctuates. Even within a 24-hour period, there will be a fluctuation in your levels of estrogen. Estrogen helps with the production of certain chemicals such as serotonin and endorphins. And these chemicals help to increase the feeling of well-being and happiness. So there is a massive link between estrogen levels and your feeling of well-being. Estrogens also stimulate the neurons, and it supports the growth of your nerve cells. You think about your brain is full of nerve cells and blood vessels. Estrogen works on the brain cells. It acts on the lining of the blood vessels, supplying the brain, causing these blood vessels to stay patent. We call it vasodilation. Keeps them open. If you've got open blood vessels, you have reduced risks of dementia, reduced risks of strokes. So this is why women, once they go through the change, once they go through the menopause, they have a significant increase in the incidence, that's the number of strokes, and the incidence of dementia because they have a lack of estrogen. Estrogen also plays a key role in the production of energy within the brain. And once we find that your estrogen levels are low, the brain needs energy to function. And a lot of women, when they're going through the change, they realize that they can't concentrate, and they have what we call brain fog. Now, the benefits of estrogen for all women, that estrogen actually helps with learning. If you've got good levels of estrogen, you can better absorb and understand new things. It helps with the fine motor control of your fingers. It improves your memory. It helps with the sensitivity to pain. One of the symptoms that women have when they're going through the menopause is that they have a sensation of ants crawling in their skin or itchiness, and they have a lot of pain. It could be because of the changes in their estrogen levels that can cause this. Estrogen also helps with motor coordination. And as I mentioned earlier, it protects against Alzheimer's and strokes because it helps with the reduction of inflammation, and it also helps against the reduction of gray matter. Gray matter is the part of the brain that is full of the neurons. So estrogen is so important, much more important than we realize. The second hormone is progesterone. It's a long word, progesterone. And these levels, can you remember the slide I showed you previously? That can also fluctuate in the perimenopausal period, and it drops off to become almost non-existent in the postmenopausal period. Now, progesterone is so important because it affects the GABA neuroreceptors. Now, these GABA neuroreceptors, just bear with me, they are neuroinhibitory. So progesterone actually has a calming, relaxing effect on the body. In fact, progesterone, if you take the medication, we tend to advise that you take it in the evening or at nighttime because it has a sedative effect. It also helps with anxiety, with stress, and with fear. So progesterone is so important for the brain and for brain health. So the third hormone that's so important is your testosterone level. Now, testosterone is, even though it's predominantly a male hormone, it's also a very important hormone in women's health. It has a significant impact in the woman's central nervous system and the brain. Testosterone strengthens the neurons and the blood vessels. And there are symptoms that are not specific to testosterone, but women who have low testosterone levels, they tend to complain of brain fog, difficulty in decision-making, reduced clarity of thought. And although I didn't put it on there, they also complain of reduced libido. But all these hormones work together. They all work in hand in hand with each other. So there isn't a specific low estrogen or low progesterone or low testosterone symptom. They all work together, but they're all important for optimal brain health. So what are those symptoms? We talked about the physical symptoms, didn't we, earlier? What are the mental symptoms, the stress-related symptoms that women experience when they're going through the change, when they're going through the menopause and through the perimenopause? Well, the common one is mood swings. They find that one minute they're very angry, next minute they're calm. They have widely swinging moods. They find that they're struggling to think straight. They have what we call foggy thinking. Some people struggle to sleep, as we mentioned earlier. They struggle to fall asleep, or they wake up in the middle of the night. It could be because of the hot flushes. Some people have sweats in the middle of the night. They don't have any interest in intercourse. They're very irritable. You know, a woman going through the menopause can be very irritable. Severe forms of menopausal symptoms can result in depression and anxiety. You find some women can be very snappy. They see red, they can be angry, and sometimes for no real reason. But all of this causes a woman to lose her confidence. It makes a woman have low self-esteem. She feels as if she's changing. She doesn't really understand herself. She doesn't understand that why she's changing. She's so tired. She's so angry. She's so weak. Things are changing all the time. And if a woman had pre-existing mental health conditions, so if this woman had in the past suffered from anxiety or depression, women going through the menopause, it tends to be even worse. And it can be a challenge to navigate this system. But don't worry, there is help. There's always a positive at the end. There are some risk factors that make it worse, because like I mentioned earlier, not all women suffer from severe symptoms. We'll all have symptoms, but not all women will have severe symptoms. But if you had pre-existing mental health problems, if you had a past history of postnatal depression or premenstrual syndrome, if you've got multiple health problems, so if you are going through the change or going through the perimenopause, already being diagnosed with long-term conditions, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, all sorts of things, you tend to find that you will struggle more going through the menopause. And also, a woman going through the change, so we're talking about a woman in her 40s and her 50s. These are women who are looking after children, possibly. Their children are getting older. They need to look after their parents. The parents are also getting older. That's increased stress. These are women who are already doing well in their careers. They're becoming more senior, getting more managerial roles, leadership roles. All these add stress to the already stressful situation of the menopause. And that can be quite confusing for the clinician because it's difficult to unpick or unpack whether this is a woman going through the menopause purely or whether she actually has a mood disorder. And we saw that a lot in the pandemic. There were lots of people presenting with low mood, anxiety, and they were also in the age of the menopause. So it was a challenge to determine whether this is a pure anxiety or depression disorder or whether this is menopausal, because as you can see, the symptoms do overlap. And as doctors, as GPs, I must say I am guilty. Often we put these women on antidepressants. And if they are going through these issues because of the menopause, the medication may not be effective because really what they need is not an antidepressant, it is hormones or other treatments. So there are various reasons why a woman goes through stress whilst they're going through the menopause, as mentioned in the previous slide. Mood conditions are multifactorial. There's so many different reasons why a woman would be having menopausal issues. Biological reasons, the changes in hormones. They're tired all the time. They're not sleeping very well. Some women have vaginal dryness. They don't have interest in sex. That's low libido. That can cause issues with their partners, relationship issues. They have psychological issues. If they've got pre-existing mental health issues, that worsens during the menopause. And there are negative beliefs about the menopause, aren't there? We all have some beliefs about the menopause. And that can actually affect a woman's self-esteem and the way she views herself. If she feels that while she's going through the menopause, she's no longer attractive. She's over the hill. She's gone past it. Some of these are symptoms or beliefs that we already carry. And as mentioned earlier, women may have issues with their children, grandchildren even. They may have relationship issues. They've got older parents. They've got work stress. They become more senior in their careers. They might be businessmen or women. And it can be a challenge to navigate this period. So a holistic and personalized approach is essential because all women are different. If you look at this slide and you try and fit in where you are in this slide, you will all be different. Not all of us will have children or grandchildren. Some of us might have pre-existing medical conditions. Some of us might have pre-existing mental issues. So it's difficult. Everybody is different. And so there is not one size fits all when it comes to the menopause. You need to look at it individualized, personalized, and also look at it holistically. So what can be done? What is the solution? So the first thing is, I am not here to plug HRT. I just want you to be aware of it, but I do recommend it as a therapy for menopausal symptoms if they're very severe. If you consider hormone replacement, what's happening when you are going through the perimenopause or menopause? Your hormone levels are deficient. you actually have a hormone deficiency. Now, if you had a vitamin D deficiency, what would you take? You would take vitamin D. If you had an iron deficiency, you would take iron. If you have a hormone deficiency, the treatment really would be to replace what you are lacking. There is no two ways about it. Hormone replacement therapy is the most effective treatment for menopausal symptoms, the most effective. It relieves those symptoms related to hormone deficiencies. If you are lacking estrogen, you replace it with estrogen. If you're lacking progesterone, the same thing. And if you're lacking testosterone, the same thing. And there are various forms of them: tablets, creams, gels, patches, sprays. This is not the forum to talk about them in detail, but it's out there. Not everybody can take the HRT though, but majority of women should be able to benefit from taking the HRT. It's always best to get good advice because, like I mentioned earlier, every single woman is different. And so it needs to be tailored to that particular woman. And when is the best time to start HRT? Well, interestingly, it's not when you have gone through the menopause. You've missed the boat by then. The best time to start HRT is in the perimenopause, the 10 years before you have your periods, when your hormones are fluctuating. Remember that slide? When 1 minute is high, next minute is low. That's the best time to maximize the benefits of HRT and to maximize the benefits, especially on brain health. It is the perimenopause. That's the best time. But there's all, for every woman, regardless of whether they can take HRT or not, lifestyle factors will definitely help with the menopause. A healthy lifestyle can minimize the effects of the menopause. It can help to keep your heart and your bones strong. And what are lifestyle factors? I'm pretty sure we all know what I mean by lifestyle. I've been on this platform and spoken about it a couple of times in the past. But specific for the menopausal woman, we need to be eating calcium-enriched food items, because one of the things that happens when we're going through the change is that we start leaching calcium. So we need to be replacing that. So calcium-rich items at least 2 or 3 times daily is what we should be eating. I pop down, eat oily fish at least once a week. Personally, I think that's not enough. We should eat it more if you can. Oily fish is full of your polyunsaturated fats and your omega-3s and 6, which is really good for your cholesterol level and is good for your heart health. Okay, and reduce your salt and your saturated fats. That's for your healthy heart. Eat at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. You need to get your phytochemicals, that's the chemicals found in fruits and vegetables. You really need to get them in. It's good for your well-being. It increases all your vitamins, so your vitamins A all the way to the end. You can get a wide range of vitamins by eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, colors of the rainbows on your plate every day. They contain protective antioxidants, and they also protect the cancer-protecting chemicals as well in your fruits and vegetables. And we also should be eating low glycemic index carbohydrates. So those are the carbohydrates that take a long time to break down into sugar. A long time. So these are your whole wheat or your whole grain oats and pulses and breads and pastas and stuff like that. My advice as well is to eat protein with every meal. From the age of 35, we start to lose muscle mass as well as bone mass from 35. So even before you go through the perimenopause, we're already leaching, we're already losing muscle mass. And protein is the building block of muscle. So we really need to be eating protein with every meal. And it doesn't have to be meat, but we're looking at things like your Yogurt, Greek yogurt is a great source of protein. Eggs, fish, beans, nuts and seeds. You can tailor it to your own lifestyle and your own diet. But these are good lifestyle. These are good, a good foundation for every woman, regardless of whether they can take HRT or not, and also wherever they are in their reproductive cycle, whether they're pre-menopausal, perimenopausal, menopausal, or postmenopausal. So if you're before the menopause, you're going through the menopause, or you finish the menopause, these are good factors that we could all do without even getting a prescription. Looking at your diet, making sure you're eating calcium-rich food, making sure you've got your fish, if you can eat your fish, especially your oily fish, so like your salmon, sardines, mackerel, the oily fish, they're really good for our heart, and fruits and vegetables and protein with every single meal. Other things that you could do, remember we talked about how estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, all those sex hormones, how they affect the brain. So one way that you can continue to improve your brain health is to do brain exercises. When was the last time we did a crossword? Okay, so brain exercises would include things like crosswords, quizzes, Sudoku. Actually, brain exercises will also include socializing, going out with a friend, meeting up for a coffee. These actually help your brain health. And taking up a new hobby actually helps with your brain health. It helps with the stimulation of your brain. Why don't we learn another language? Let's take up Spanish, perhaps. We know that these exercises can improve brain health and it can reduce the rate of decline. And that's what we're talking about here. Stress in the menopause does not have to be a life sentence or death sentence. Physical exercise is also extremely beneficial because it increases endorphins and serotonin. Remember how we talked at the beginning that estrogen helps to increase your endorphins and serotonin. So as your estrogen levels start to drop and dip, these levels of serotonin also start to dip. Exercise is beneficial. It can also give you a bit of a boost. Serotonin and endorphins are good for just generally feeling good, feeling happy, good for your well-being. Physical exercise is also good for bone health, especially the weight-bearing exercises. So, when you're lifting up weights, lifting against resistance, that would help your muscle mass. That's so good. What else can be done? So as a GP, if I have seen a patient who is struggling with the mood and may want HRT or may not want HRT, I would consider cognitive behavioral therapy. It can help us look at the way we think about the menopause. Remember, we talked about those negative mindsets. If you're already going into the change with negative mindsets about the change, you will struggle when you're going through it. So CBT can help us. It can help replace the negative thoughts with the positive thoughts, okay? We are lucky that we have an NHS, so make use of the health screening services that are available on the NHS. If you've been called for a breast check, go for your mammogram. If you've been called for your smears, go for your smears. These will all help you. And also, if you've been called to send a sample of your stool for your bowel screening, please go ahead and do that. It's easy to say, stay calm and positive. A lot of the times it's completely out of our control. It's the hormones, that's my excuse. So hormone imbalance can result in increasing the stress and in severe cases can cause depression. We need to be looking at ways in which we can relax and in ways in which we can reduce our stress. And for those who are that way inclined, you could look at complementary and alternative therapies. People talk about acupuncture or aromatherapy or hypnotherapy, even yoga as ways in which that can help the menopause. It's not my area of expertise, but it is something that could be explored. And I put naturopathy there because in the online menopause center that I'm working with, we have a naturopath who is absolutely brilliant in discussing non-HRT therapies for women who don't want to take HRT or who can't take HRT, looking at supplements and other things that they could do to improve their health during the menopause. So it's worth looking into naturopathy as well. This is a slide which I just got from a colleague, actually, looking at different types of self-care. Self-care for us women can be a challenge because sometimes we do feel guilty if we are just looking after ourselves. But it's so important that we do. It's so important that we look at ways that we can relax. And just like the HRT or lifestyle factors, self-care is individualized. Some people find that sleep invigorates them. Other people, it's exercise, you know? Other people, they like being in the company of others, whereas others like to be on their own. There is no positive, well, there's no good or bad here. It's all about you. Know yourself. Know which ones you will find that invigorates you, and do it as much as possible. And finally, this is my second to the last slide. There are benefits for the menopause. It's not all doom and gloom, okay? For those women who have gone through the change, there are benefits. There are no more periods. I mean, you know, we women, we know what it's like every month. Come on, you're going to have a bleed. That goes. No more PMS, so no more premenstrual syndrome. The feeling of anger and tension before you have a period has gone. You can have intercourse without getting worried that you're going to get pregnant. That's a good thing. If you struggle from fibroids, that's something I had. They do shrink in the menopause because they are supplied by the hormones. And if those hormone levels reduce, they shrink. That can only be a positive thing. Women who have gone through the menopause have greater self-assurance. They feel a lot better in themselves. And they can focus on taking care of themselves and not running around looking for the period products. It's also a time that they could start to take risks. What have they got to lose now? Nothing. And I did give this talk to a church and I put ministry at the bottom. But if it's something that's it interests you, it's also a time to consider ministry or charity work. You can start thinking of other things. So the menopause is not a death sentence. By no means is a death sentence. There are lots of issues that go on during the menopause. Education is key, which is why forums such as this are brilliant, where you can ask the questions that you've always wanted to ask, but you didn't have a way or a means to ask. Questions about therapy and stuff, questions about whether you're going crazy. It is probably due to hormone imbalance. Information is so important. But yeah, menopause does not have to be a death sentence. There are lots of things that we can do to combat the stress during the menopause. And that's my slide.
Great, Dr. Joyce, massive thanks. That was really informative. The pace, the articulation, I'm sure, you know, all those on the call will appreciate that. So thank you once again for, you know, the insightful presentation. And we have a couple of questions that, you know, I will be posing to you. I mean, I wonder how the Olympics will look like.
The Olympics?
Yeah, your last slide.
Oh, oh yes. That's the heat. You know, when a woman goes through the menopause and they start getting the hot flushes, those are the heats.
Right. Okay. And then and you did finish off with, you know, the the slide before talking about the benefits, and you talked about taking risk, but also I like the aspect around, doing some charity work, supporting others, being able to, give something back, to people. I just wondered if you could expand a bit more on that, and then also, what did you mean by being able to take risk?
Well, the thing is, when a woman is going through, during the reproductive years, there are so many things that she has to take into consideration before she does anything. We women, we know. So you're going on holiday, you have to think, am I going to be on a period? Do I need to take things to support me? Will I be able to get into the swimming pool? There are so many things that goes on a woman's mind, even just to go on a holiday. When you've gone through the change, you're not having your periods, you could jump in any pool at any time. You don't need to think about, am I on a period? Okay? Taking risks, or I'm not talking about nasty risks, but I'm just talking about when you've now finished your periods, I think it gives you, and also because you are an older, hopefully more mature woman, because you can go through the change early, but then you can now start thinking about other things. It's not always tied down to your menstrual cycle. Also, if you've gone through the menopause, you've got to and you are in a relationship and don't want children, you've got to think about contraception. It's a minefield. There's so many things that go through a woman's mind just for one thing. So that's what I mean by taking risks. All those are gone, and now you're free.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Joyce. I have 2 young girls, so I know about the pains and the products and all that. So I think, a good thing will be a swimming club for, people who have just gone through or going through and, sort of gelling. Okay, a couple of questions. So one is, workplace and government are bringing information to support women in the workforce, because I think at the opening of this session, you talked about being able to, if you're an employer, if you understand these things, you can better support your employees. And
Yes.
someone is asking if there's any further information on, about that. This person is saying they had to take too much time off work and they weren't paid because of severe menopause symptoms. And
Yes.
they're wondering whether you have any suggestions.
Yes, whoever you are on the platform, you are not alone. A lot of times women take time off or they leave their jobs because of some of the symptoms we talked about this morning. They lose their confidence. They feel so tired and fatigued. They can't concentrate. And so well, I'm working with this online menopause center. One of the things that we do is that we talk to companies about menopause and give them support and tools on how to support a woman going through the change. But the most important, the onus is always on us. If we're going to rely on the government, I think we're going to be here for a long time. So the onus really is on us to be able to communicate effectively and to look at our own health and see if there's anything we can do to improve our menopausal symptoms.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. Right. Okay. You've mentioned HRT and preparing for the menopause. How do we know that we're going through perimenopause? And is it possible that suddenly you can find yourself, in the menopause without, any or with or without severe symptoms?
Yes. So I'll answer the last question first. Yes, a lot of women can go through the change. So this change is the perimenopause, where your periods are slowly stopping and then they go, and they don't have severe symptoms. That's not unusual at all, but every woman will get some symptoms, but it's all about severity, okay? But yes, it's possible for you to now say, oh, hold on a minute, I've not had a period for 6 months or something. You've gone through the change. Now you're asking about the perimenopause. The truth of the matter is, the perimenopause is that 10 years, could be about 8-10 years before you stop having your periods. So it's something that you will look back and say, right, I was in the perimenopause at those times. But all women going through the perimenopause would have some symptoms because your hormones are fluctuating. If you look at yourself significantly, you will find that something has changed. It could be your mood, your sleep, you might be sweating more, you might find you're aching more, you have some tiredness, your periods are changing. There are so many symptoms, and that will tell you you're in the perimenopause. Now, for the NHS doctors, and I know there's a few on the platform, we don't recommend doing blood tests to determine whether or not you are in the perimenopause or not. And the reason is, if you remember that slide or the graph I showed you, when you're going through the perimenopause, your periods are up and down, just like the waves. If we take your blood tests and they're low, we would say, oh, you've gone through the change. And then 2 weeks later, you might have a period because your hormones are high. So we cannot really extrapolate much information from your blood tests when you're in the perimenopause. If you are going through symptoms and it's early, so you're less than the age of 40, that's unusual. So we need to do blood tests then. Remember, I talked about what is an early menopause and what is a premature menopause. But most women, if your periods start stopping, or you're having them every 3 months, or you're having them, they're heavier, something is changing, you're highly likely you're in the perimenopause.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dr. Joyce. So can you give us a reminder of the age bracket where we should expect to possibly be going through the perimenopause?
From the 45 and above.
Okay. All right. Okay. When is it likely for the symptoms to be worse? That's one question, the perimenopausal, period. And then also someone is asking whether there's treatment for, perimenopause.
Yes. So when is it likely for the symptoms to be worse is when your hormones are at its lowest point. So if your hormones levels are dipping and you're not sleeping and you're having issues with your mood, that's the lowest point. But in the perimenopause, that might pick up. You might find that you're feeling low for a few months and then it picks up again. When you've gone through the change and your periods are stopped, those symptoms will start to peter off. And what was the other question?
The other one was about treatment during perimenopause.
Yeah. So the treatment of the perimenopause, I did mention earlier, one would be replacing what you are deficient in, which is your hormones. So you can take HRT, and in fact, HRT is advisable to be taken in the perimenopause. It's not best when you've finished, not had a period for 10 years and you start taking it. That's not the best time. It's when you are having those fluctuating symptoms, so it keeps your hormone levels at a good level and it's more regular. That's the best time to be taking HRT. But if you don't have to take HRT, there are so many other ways in which you can combat these symptoms. And the most important one really is our lifestyle. We talked about the lifestyle factors, keeping your weight in a reasonable BMI, making sure you're exercising, making sure you're maximizing your sleep, using your brain effectively, doing the quizzes. There are so many things that you could do as a woman to improve these symptoms.
Okay, thanks, Doc. Whilst you're speaking about HRT, someone has asked if you can explain a bit more why the Mirena coil can be important if a woman decides to take HRT.
So HRT is just hormone replacement therapy. And there are three, in fact, there's four, but we won't talk about the fourth one. There's three main hormones that can be replaced. The most important one is estrogen. These fluctuations in mood, the fluctuations in your sweating, your temperature, it's mainly due to an estrogen deficiency. And you need, if you're going to replace that, that's either with a tablet or gel or a spray. The second hormone is testosterone. And your testosterone, as I mentioned, that's a nice calming hormone. And the Mirena coil is a progesterone-only coil. There is progesterone in the Mirena coil. So for a woman going through the change, you could have a Mirena coil in, that would give you the progesterone form of HRT, but you still need to look at estrogen and possibly testosterone as other supplements.
Okay, thanks, Doc. Two questions about support. One is someone asking how they should communicate to their spouse about the menopause and the symptoms so they don't feel rejected. And I know women could be culprits. And then the follow-on is how, women will prefer to be supported. And now focusing on men, what could our roles be? Supporting, it could be our mothers, our sisters, or spouses who are going through the menopause. How could we practically, support them?
Well, Charles, that you're a man. Maybe that's a question that you can answer. How would you support your wife if she's going through the menopause? Let's think, I'm not a man, but I would know for myself, my own husband, how I would like him to support me is to first and foremost understand, the worst thing somebody can say if a woman is being irrational is to say, it's your hormones, because that's going to make me see red, So it's about supporting that person mentally and having conversations with your spouse. It would be great if, for example, your spouse could have been on a platform such as this, so that he could hear for himself that his wife is not crazy, she's not being unreasonable. There are reasons why her mood changes from week to week, because that's how frequent it can be. There are reasons why she rejects him in the night and reasons why she feels a little bit closer. It's not him, it could just be the hormones. And he should also support her by suggesting, would you want to go, supporting her with things like going for a walk, getting on the bike together, going swimming, things that she likes. He could be supportive in that way. Sometimes you come back from work, you are exhausted, you're already tired. And the last thing you want to do is now go into the kitchen and start another work, another job. So supporting the woman in her home is, I think, there are also many things that a woman can do. But every relationship is different. So, it all depends on where you are, which is why when it comes to discussions about the menopause, a holistic approach is so important. It's not always increasing the dose of the HRT. It's looking at what's going on in your life, how we can reduce the stress. Is it your children? Is it your parents? Is it work? Looking at everything. But Charles, I would like you to answer. How would you support your wife who in the next 50 years, I don't know how long, when she goes through the change?
Well, I've heard you loud and clear, and being reasonable and understanding, and maybe what we need to do is to set up a men's alliance for the menopause and to support, and then bring some of yourselves there, because like you've said, no two relationships are the same.
True.
The bit about being irrational, changing mood, and wondering, is this a woman I'm married, or is this a one I've lived with, and stuff like that. That could be quite telling. And interesting enough that there is a follow-on question still focusing on the men, and it will be good. I think someone had the hand up earlier on, and you've gone up. We would love to hear from yourselves. But someone, it said, whilst you will not be worried about becoming pregnant during sex or having sex because you've gone through that, at the same time, there's a possibility of a low sex drive. What advice are you going to give to your fellow females? Or yes, we need to be thinking about how we behave as men, when we have high sex drive, but then for the woman going through the menopause, the sex drive is low. What's your advice?
So we've talked about our hormones, don't we? One of the biggest hormone that causes reduction in libido is testosterone. And although it is a dominant male hormone, women do produce it in good quantities, and they really do feel it when the levels are low. So just like I mentioned in the talk, if you are deficient in any of these hormones, then the first thing is to replace it. Okay, the first and foremost, if you're deficient in your testosterone, consider replacing it. And low testosterone might make you feel reduce your libido. Another reason why a woman's libido is reduced is the way she feels about herself. We know that when a woman is going through the change, they do tend to put on weight. They do tend to put on weight at the wrong places. They might feel that they're not attractive. They don't feel that they're in the mood. So there are so many reasons why the libido starts to drop. So it's looking at what is going on in the woman's mind as well, because I'm pretty sure most men don't really mind a little bit of extra meat on the bones for these women, but it's all in the woman's head. Another reason why women can be quite, the libido reduces is stress, because the last thing a woman wants to do when she is stressed is have intercourse, isn't it? We women, we know that. So stress reduction in whatever form you can do it, whether it's going out for walks, whether it's stopping your third job, whether it's putting boundaries in place with your in-laws or whatever it is, that can definitely help with your libido. I didn't mention this in the slide, or maybe I did, maybe it's there, but one of the reasons why women don't like having sex as well when they're going through the change is that they can become very dry down there in the vagina, and it can be quite sore. So replacing with your HRT or using, something's popped on the screen, or using vaginal lubricants, that's things that are emollients that you can put down there, that can definitely help. So talking about the situation to a friend or a clinician or your GP or a menopause doctor, that can help, definitely.
Wow, thanks, docs, for really enlightening us on that. So someone is saying a lot of these symptoms are similar to dementia. Is there any possibility of misdiagnosis, therefore not getting the support you need?
Well, I don't believe that dementia in itself are these symptoms. So dementia is much more severe. We're talking about forgetfulness and mood disorders. But if that persists, then that can definitely develop into dementia. Dementia, you've got to diagnose it. You've got to ask the right questions. You have screening tests. So I doubt it very much if a 40-year-old woman would be diagnosed with dementia who presents with this. I think highly likely they would look at stress and look at the menopause first.
Okay, thanks, Doc. Being overweight and the menopause, does weight affect symptoms of perimenopause or the menopause?
Most definitely. Absolutely. Absolutely. Weight, the heavier you are, the more you struggle with your hormone fluctuations, and your fat cells itself can be a source of hormones. So you do find, and also you've got to be aware that being overweight puts you at risk of certain malignancies, certain cancers. I don't know whether you're aware of that, but just being obese increases your risk of breast cancers, bowel cancers, and various other cancers. And it's a challenge for someone who is grossly overweight and perhaps maybe diabetic and hypertensive to then be offered HRT, because we know the risks there are. So one of the things I would encourage anybody who's not going through the change would be to definitely bring their BMI down before they go through the change.
Thanks, Doc. Well, whilst we're on that, does the menopause follow a family pattern? So, for example, if your mum, goes through that early, is it likely to be, similar for a daughter?
Yeah, highly likely. You have family reasons, family history, but you don't know for a fact whether, you could have inherited some things from your father's side. But yes, if your mother went through the change early, you have a higher than normal chance that you will go through the change early as well. But women go through the change for various reasons. If you had a mother who had a hysterectomy, perhaps in her early 40s, and they took her ovaries out, she would have been catapulted into the change, but that's not hereditary, yeah? Or if she had cancer and they took her ovaries out and her womb out, she would have been pushed into the change because she's got no hormone production, and that's not a familial cause. But yes, we do find that women, just like when you started your periods, you find that women who went through the menarche, we call it, when you start to have your periods, it tends to run in families.
Right, thanks, Doc. Thanks to my colleague Praise. We live streaming on Instagram as well, and we have a question from Instagram. You talked about earlier on about hysterectomy, and someone is asking, if you have that but you keep your ovaries, do you know if you're going to be in the menopause?
Yeah, it will be a bit of a challenge. So if you've had your womb removed, so you're not going to have periods, but you've left your ovaries in, so you will still be having some hormone changes, just as if you're having a period, but you won't be having a bleed. So you won't have the period, the bleeding symptoms, but you will have all the other symptoms that we mentioned. So you will only know if you're going through the change by your symptoms, not the bleeding. But you can have hot flushes, night sweats, mood swings, itchy skin, memory issues, the works. Just as if a woman had a womb. The only difference is you won't be having the issues with bleeding. We do know, though, that women who have had a hysterectomy and they've left their ovaries in, they tend to go through the menopause a little bit earlier. So maybe a year or two at the most after having the hysterectomy, you might go through the change. So it's important to factor that in when you're talking about having a hysterectomy.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. I think what will be really useful is sort of a fact sheet that we can do, especially I'm thinking, because you did put me on the spot, what men could do, or sons and brothers and all, to support. So it's something, that if we can do a fact sheet, then we can put it on our website and share, with people.
Yeah,
but then there's a question about
collaborate with that. We can do something.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. There's a question about how long does the menopause last for? And then we can come to some skin and hair related questions.
How long does the menopause last? I think it's going to be how long is a piece of string. So we know the menopause, the perimenopause, is up to 10 years. But the actual menopause, nobody really knows. We can only say that you've gone through the change when you've not had a period for 12 consecutive months after the age of 50. So you might be 53, for example, and you've not had a period for 10 months, and then you had a period, you have not gone through the menopause. So it's something that we can only say really in retrospect, whether you've actually gone through the change completely or not, when you've not had a period for 12 months. I don't know where they got this 12 months, whether they picked it from the ether, but that's what we use. And it's also important for us to be aware of that 12 months, because if you've not had a period, let's say you're 48, you've not had a period for 3 years, and then you start to bleed, that is significant, because we would expect all women who have gone through the change not to bleed again. So if you've not had a period for a year and you're above the age of 50 and then you start bleeding, you need to go and see your GP immediately, because that's not right. And if you're below the age of 50, you've not had a period for 2 years, and then you start, go and see your GP. But yeah, we can only give it a retrospective diagnosis when you've not had a period for 12 months. The other question I would imagine that you're asking is the symptoms. So you might have stopped having your period, but you're still having the flushing, you're still having the mood swings, you're still having the night sweats. Unfortunately, they say up to 5% of women never stop. So there is a percentage of women who are no longer having periods, but they're still having night sweats and they're still having hot flushes, and that can persist for a long, long time. But majority of women, they would stop.
Thanks, Doc. A question about the possibility of becoming pregnant during the perimenopause.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So you can definitely get pregnant during the perimenopause. You're still having your ovaries are still working. In fact, during the perimenopause, that's the time, because women do relax. They've had their kids, they're thinking, oh, it's all over. That's the time that you get these surprise pregnancies during the perimenopause. So you need to be extra careful. If your periods are becoming erratic, check and see. It could be pregnancy. You can get pregnant during the perimenopause, definitely.
And what's the likely chance of survival?
Of the child?
Yeah.
Just as any age. Clearly, if you're in your late 40s and you have a baby, you are a high-risk pregnancy. And then there's more risk of having some chromosomal abnormalities. And also, there's also a high risk of you having multiple pregnancies, so having twins or triplets, because when you're going through the perimenopause, sometimes your ovaries, instead of producing one egg, they decide to produce two, because, that's what they do. They're coming to the end. So you have a higher risk of having multiple twin pregnancies in the perimenopause, but with good antenatal care, your child will survive.
In the 50s as well?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
The only problem is obviously with the child. There are risks of chromosomal abnormalities. I'm sure you've heard of Down syndrome. That tends to occur with the older woman. But that would be checked, I guess, when you are pregnant, and you are a high risk. So it will be a challenge, but not insurmountable. Women are getting pregnant later and later. Lots of them are postponing reproduction because of careers and the like, so they're getting pregnant later. But yeah, it's definitely doable. Your fertility will drop, so it's not going to be easy. Your fertility starts dropping from the age of 35, but not impossible.
Okay, thanks, Doc. A couple more questions. I hope colleagues will give us a bit more time, whilst we have Dr. Ameh. Someone is asking whether you run a private practice, or offer consultation for this.
Yes, so I have many hats. I offer consultations for skin and hair. That's my own private clinic. Now, if you are looking for consultations around the menopause, then it will be through the online menopause center, which is all online. And they do offer a 15-minute free consultation. So it's worth taking that up. If you want to talk about whether you are eligible for HRT or not, it's the online menopause center. And yeah, you can get a free consultation. I would take that up. Also, they have a naturopath in our team. So if you don't want to have HRT, or you have HRT and you want to look at other things, then they offer a free 15-minute consultation. So it's worth doing.
Okay, thanks. Can partners and spouses also access that line?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
No, I'm asking whether spouses or partners can also, call in just to get some advice on the online platform.
No.
Okay.
No. They will only talk to the woman, and they will make sure that it is the woman who is asking the questions, because they want to be no.
Right. No, that's fair enough. You talked about hair and skin. Since going through the menopause, my skin and hair have become dry. And, this person is asking whether there are any remedies.
So we talked about estrogen being works on the brain, but there are estrogen receptors on every single cell. Okay, so we've got estrogen receptors on our skin and in our hair. So if your levels are dropping, the estrogen receptors on your skin helps to produce ceramides, and ceramides are useful for to moisturize your skin. So if you've got a reduction in your estrogen levels, you will have a reduction in your ceramide production, and your skin will become very dry. One of the symptoms of the menopause is dry skin. You start getting dry patches. You also start to become quite hollowed and wrinkled. So it is due to your hormone deficiency. The same thing with hair. Now, there is a type of hair, oh, this is flashed on my screen. There is a type of hair loss that occurs in the menopause and in a woman, and that's called the male pattern balding, and that is also hormonal driven. So unfortunately, if you are going through those issues, it's because of a hormone deficiency. The best thing would be to look at replacing the hormones first and foremost. However, not everybody wants HRT, not everybody can have HRT. So for every woman, you need to be looking at skincare products that have ceramides in them. And you need to be very gentle with your skin, okay? It's not the time to be aggressive. And also, I would recommend for a woman going through the menopause to consider using a retinol. Retinol is a vitamin A derivative. Sorry, Charles, I can talk for hours.
No,
But
no,
I'll
no,
just
no.
quickly mention it.
Yeah.
Retinol is a vitamin A derivative, and it helps with the regeneration of your skin cells. So it will help with exfoliation. You have a child and a child has a cut. Within a week, that cut's healed. But when you go through the menopause and you have a cut, it will take weeks because the skin is not regenerating. A retinol will help with that. And there are different grades. You start with a lower grade and you build up. But yes, going through the change will affect your skin, unfortunately, and your hair. Everything gets drier.
Right. Thank you very much. You talked about not everyone would want to have HRT. There's a question about links between HRT and certain cancers. Any thoughts on that?
So yes, there has been a lot of talk about HRT and breast cancer specifically. And that was because of a study that was done ages ago. There was a time that everybody was getting HRT, and then nobody got HRT because of this study. Unfortunately, the study was, for want of a better word, I can't use that word, no, not on the internet, but it was a wrong study. It wasn't done properly. They looked at women in their 60s and they looked at a certain type of progesterone. So already your risk of developing breast cancer, we know now that 1 in 7 women would get breast cancer. Taking HRT will increase your risks to 1 in 7. That means there is no increased risk, okay? That was erroneous. The truth of the matter is taking HRT does not increase your risk of breast cancer. And there are now much safer forms of HRT that you can take that will prevent significant side effects, especially when it comes to your liver. So to be honest, there are very few people that cannot take HRT.
Thanks, Doc. And I'm going to bring in Lalinka in a minute, but lots of thank yous and positive messages in the chat box. And Nusrat, thanks for your kind words. But then whilst we're on this, what are the alternatives to HRT patches? This person is saying that they had supply issues, so stop using them. They've now been prescribed antidepressants, and the person would like to come off them, as she thinks the hormonal changes are contributing to the difficulties she's experiencing. What are the options for this lady?
So I've got to say, everybody is talking about HRT, but there has been a lot of challenges getting hold of HRT. Sometimes you've got to go from pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy. The good news is, if you're talking about patches, so perhaps the good news is there are different forms, but similar forms. So if you can't get the patch, then maybe you try the gel. If you can't get the gel, maybe you try the spray. The pharmacists have been given the power, for want of a better word, that if you go in with a prescription for a patch and perhaps they've only got the spray, they would give you the equivalent HRT, but it will be a different form. Okay, I'm glad to hear that you're using a patch, because topical forms, that's the ones that you put on your skin, topical forms of HRT, usually your estrogen, is far safer for you. But there are other things out there for you. So if you can't get hold of the patch, see if you can get the gel, see if you can get the spray.
Right. Thanks, Doc. And Dr. Diana, thanks for, adding in there, some thoughts as well and some advice. So someone is asking a copy of this clip. We will put the YouTube, link in the chat box. Someone is talking about their teeth bleeding more and the feeling of being different. Any thoughts? And then I'm going to bring in Lalinka.
So we do know that you're feeling different is you're not alone. At the beginning, I talked about pain sensitivity. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of research going out there, but we know estrogen affects our nerves, it affects our neurons, it affects the way in which we sense things differently, and that includes pain and even touch. So you might find when you're going through the change that you feel as if there are ants or insects crawling, you might be itching a lot. In my practice, a lot of people come in with an itch, but that could also be dry skin. Dry skin is itchy. And so teeth, I don't know why you would have bleeding gums, but we do know that there's difficulty in resorption of calcium when you're going through the change. Estrogen does help with that. And if you remember, we talked about your lifestyle, you need to be eating calcium-rich foods, and calcium-rich food will affect your nails, bones, and teeth. So perhaps that's the reason why you're having problems with your gums.
Thanks, Dr. Ameh. I think Lalinka had a hand up.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Dr. Ameh. My question is, do you know when we go to the doctors and we have all these perimenopause symptoms, sometimes it's, how I can say, I don't know all doctors, but I will say the ones that you discuss here about issues with your hormones, usually they don't give you advice or the best treatments to help you to go through. They say just balance your diet. And it's quite frustrating for some women, because as a Black woman, we go through a lot. And then nowadays we know that the doctors or the health service is overwhelmed, and sometimes they don't provide the right support that we need. From what I heard today from your beautiful and informative presentation, is something that will make me go back to the doctor and start to put something in place, because they don't listen to us. We listen to our body. You mentioned about the hair loss and skin dry. When you go to the doctor, they give you something completely different, never link with is something related to your hormones. How we can, from now on, from what I've heard here, I can go back to my doctor and start discuss to put something in place for me as an example. And then my last question as well is, if please you could share, because I can see you have a beautiful skin and I want to be in that place. If you can share your clinic details for skin and the hair, please, with us. And I believe there is many ladies in the chat would love to get your advice or start to get the treatment with you. If you don't mind, please.
Oh, thank you, Lalinka.
Many thanks. And I mean, I've learned a lot, and now I can understand my mom and what's going on. And many thanks. God bless you. Thank you.
I think I've got to be honest, it's a challenge when it comes to speaking to the GPs, because GPs will only prescribe what is in what they know. And a lot of the information about HRT is relatively new. And they will try and be safe. So the first thing when it comes to being a doctor is you've got to be safe. So I don't blame any doctor who who he or she is prescribing within their area of competence and their area of knowledge. But if you're not happy with that doctor, look, generally there will be somebody within a practice who is more informative when it comes to things like menopause and women's health. Find that doctor. I don't want to say it, but it's usually women. But anyway, find that doctor and speak to that doctor and see whether they can help you when it comes to your health. And if you are thinking of or potentially having extra money, because it is not cheap, you could also get some more information on the Online Menopause Center, and they can point you in the right direction. My clinic, I think you need to email CAHN. Is that right, Charles?
Yeah, I've dropped the email address in the chat box, health@cahn.org.uk, and then we will forward the message to Dr. Ameh or any one, of our colleagues presenting on here, and they promise to get in touch with you. So two more things before we wrap up, and thanks to you all for your patience. Doc, I wonder whether you can, rehammer the message about the self-care. But before you do that, I think we've got Dr. Ambrose on. He's also asking about men and whether we go through any similarities. So Dr. Ambrose, I wonder whether you're in a place to say a few words. And then Dr. Ameh can bring a slide about the self-care, which is very important. Then also she's committed to, supporting us have a fact sheet on what men we could do, to support our women going through, the perimenopause and menopause. But then also, Doc, there has been quite a number of questions around whether eating sardine, the foods we need to eat, what you can use to thin your hair. So if you would kindly come back for a lifestyle session, and how we look after ourselves, I'm sure, colleagues will be delighted as well. So Dr. Ambrose, and then we'll go to Dr. Joyce for, her final words.
Yeah, sorry, I have been trying to unmute myself. I do get a lot of my patients in the psychiatric clinics who do come in, worried about, afraid about menopause, undergoing menopause. They perceive menopause as illness. I don't know how we as a society can normalize that this is a normal physiological change. A lot of them come in very scared, very worried about menopause. So I wonder what your advice will be and how would society normalize that? The second one is as men as well. I have heard about the concept of andropause, whereby men in their late 40s and 50s can start having symptoms similar to menopause as well. Is that something that you've come across? Thank you.
Thank you. But first and foremost, I quite agree. I think menopause has been given a bad rap recently. It is a natural process, but it doesn't mean it's something that we need to tolerate. So things that are natural, not everything that is natural has to be tolerated. Some women have horrendous times with their periods. A period is natural, but if you are having a lot of pain, heavy bleeding, then that should not be tolerated. And it's the same with the menopause. The menopause is a natural, if you are lucky enough to live long enough to go through the menopause, it is natural. And I did talk about the benefits at the end. There is light at the end of the tunnel for women. I can't wait to get there myself one of these days. And then I could say I've done away with all, the monthly bleeds. But it is a natural process. However, it doesn't mean that it should be tolerated if you are struggling with the symptoms. And I think this is the way we need to be discussing with our patients and our clients. Not everything needs to be treated. It's a little bit like even something like bereavement. If you've lost a loved one, you're going through bereavement, It is a natural process. It doesn't mean that it needs to be medicated or considered a disability, okay? But it all depends on how you respond to the bereavement and how you respond to your menopause. If you are lucky, you can go through it without having any significant symptoms, and that's a blessing. But it should not be tolerated if you're struggling with the symptoms. Did you say you were a psychiatrist? So I would imagine a lot of patients that are coming to your clinic already are quite stressed, quite anxious. So it's the way in which you approach it, that just saying this is a natural thing. And maybe discussing, I don't know whether you would as a psychiatrist, but maybe discussing therapy like HRT. And then you mentioned andropause. It isn't something that I am an expert in at all. I have read about it. So I do know there is something like it. I don't know whether it's a bit like man flu. So to be honest, I won't be able to say that much about andropause. But yes, I do know there is something like that where your androgen levels start to dip, especially your testosterone levels. And as a man, you start to lose your libido. But it's not as common as the menopause. Menopause, we can actually see changes in all your cells. I don't know whether that would happen in the andropause. I won't be able to say much more than that.
Well, Dr. Joyce, we're extremely grateful. And I know you're going to do the last slide on, looking after ourselves. My colleague Nana will be closing up. And therefore, both Nana and myself have committed to look forward to a fact sheet that we can share with our fellow men, so we can be a lot more supportive, of our women going through the menopause. And you talked about bereavement and the natural process. So on the 18th and the 25th, so next 3 weeks, the 15th and the 22nd of April, we'll be looking at bereavement and looking after ourselves and funeral and going through all that. But the next Saturday, it will be focused on orthopedics. And is one of those esteemed colleagues of Dr. Joyce's, Mr. Theophilos Asumu, consultant in, orthopedics. He will be taking the session next week. So anything about bones, joints, ligaments, and I'm not a specialist, but, come along and spread the word. So, Dr. Joyce, over to you for your final words and the self-care slide,
I need to share screen again, do I?
Yeah.
All right, 1 sec.
So whilst Dr. Joyce is bringing that up, on Tuesday evenings, we do have a session focused on nutrition and physical activity. So any question about diet, any question, the various people went on challenge, some fantastic, outcomes from that as well. So anything diet related, nutrition, Caribbean, African foods, Tuesday evening is your spot.
Right.
Over to you, Doc.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much, CAHN. This is the self-care slide that I've been asked to share. It just shows the different aspects of self-care that we could all incorporate in our lives, menopausal women and non-menopausal women and men as well. And you just got to decide which one fits you. There is no size that fits everybody. I, for example, I love to walk, and gentle walking, I absolutely love it. I also love lying on my couch and watching Netflix. That energizes me. I have friends, however, who absolutely love going to the gym and exercising. So everybody's different. You've just got to pick which one suits you. And how you know whether it suits you is how you feel after you do it. So if you have let's say you decide to go and, I don't know what I could use. You go for a meeting with a group of friends, and afterwards you feel absolutely drained. That is not serving you. You might be somebody who benefits from being alone. Or if you spent a day, you're alone at home, and at the end you feel worse, perhaps you are somebody who benefits from being in the presence of people. Okay, I have got social media there, but you can see it's got positive social media, because I do think social media is majoritively negative. I'm scared to say it because I know we're using it quite a bit, but I think that you've got to be very careful what you allow your eyes to see and what you allow your ears to hear. So self-care it just means what energizes you at the end of the day. Could be a bubble bath. It could be reading a book. I love reading. Could be going out for a walk. Time in nature seems to do it for virtually everybody, although we've got limitations for those of us who live in Manchester because of the weather. And yeah, popping in boundaries so you know where your work ends and your home life starts. I think that really does also help with self-care. Thank you.
Brilliant. So once again, Dr. Joyce, Ameh, massive thanks for giving your time. Hopefully May we can have you, May or June, have you back for lifestyle, hair, skin, and you got some positive thumbs up from Lasinka, about how you look after yourself, and hopefully you can come back and share a few of those tips. So massive thanks once again. We're extremely grateful on behalf of CAHN, Rafa International Development Agency, Croydon BME Forum, Enfield Caribbean Association, the Black Health Initiative, and then RCCG Royal House in Sheffield. Massive thank, Dr. Joyce. Now I'm going to hand over to my buddy, Nana, who is going to give us a couple of announcements and then close up. But both he and I have signed up to the fact sheets on men supporting women through the menopause. So over to you, Nana.
Thank you, Charles. So yeah, thank you for facilitating the session, brilliant. And thank you to Dr. Joyce Ameh. That's a brilliant presentation. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to share a couple of updates. Charles has already touched on a couple of them, but I'll quickly share the screen and then I can share those updates. Okay, brilliant. So for next week, Saturday at the CAHN Health Hour, we're going to have, like Charles mentioned, orthopedics. We're going to have Mr. Theophilus Asumu to have that session with us. Same time, 11 a.m. to 12:15. You can register by sending an email to events@cahn.org.uk. It will be great to have most of you on that call. Again, on Tuesday, like Charles mentioned already, we're going to have our Healthy Heart session. At CAHN, we believe that taking care of your health starts with your diet and your physical activity. So you can join us for that session on Tuesday. It starts at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. The topic's going to be healthy eating for brain and heart health. And again, we're going to have our regular facilitator, Dr. Hebosai, who is a registered nutritionist, to handle the session. We're also going to have our physical instructor, Orlando Grant, to lead on the physical activity session for that call. Again, kindly register for that particular session. You can send an email to events@cahn.org.uk. Yeah, just running through this very briefly. Again, do not forget that during your tough times, you're not alone, because at CAHN, we have a family and advocacy support service. If you need any help in terms of advocacy and counseling, please just give us a call on 0771 0022 382, or you can send an email to help@cahn.org.uk. Again, we started a counseling bereavement peer support group session by our counseling manager, Rosling, and it's been ongoing since the 9th of March. And the session is to support, offer support, friendship, and understanding in a safe and confidential space. If you have experienced grief or lost a loved one, Charles mentioned that in the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to have a session around that. So if you have experienced grief or lost a loved one, you're missing someone or feeling lonely, or you like to use lived experience of grief to help others, please send an email to rosalind@cahn.org.uk, or you can send an email to help@cahn.org.uk, or you can call our helpline 077 100 22382. Again, we also have our Green and Arts services. It's been ongoing. We're recruiting participants who want to join in. If you want to be a part of it, please send an email to Green and Arts Wellbeing. So that's one word, Green and Arts Wellbeing @cahn.org.uk, or you can call 077 899 75205. Our manager, Michelle, is leading on those sessions. Yeah, and now we have sending out shout outs and appreciation to our partners who are helping this CAHN Health Hour sessions. We're very grateful to them. So obviously we start with CAHN. If you want to contact us for any information, please reach out to Sandra Yate, email sandra@cahn.org.uk, or you can call 07389-710-957, or visit our website, www.cahn.org.uk. Massive appreciation again to Enfield Caribbean Association. They're helping promoting these sessions in Enfield, London. So if you want to reach out to ECA again, you can contact Dion John on email, dion.john@eca.org.uk. Number is 079-582-30923. 1 second. I think I had an issue with the slides. Okay. Okay, so we have Rafa International Development Agency. Again, if you want to reach out to Rafa, you can call them on 0121-358-2231 or admin@rafa.org.uk, or you can visit their website, rafa.org.uk. Again, we also have the Royal Assembly Redeemed Christian Church of God. We have our very friendly Dr. Samuel Kerenta leading the particular church. If you want to contact them, you can call 0788-2931-539, or you can visit their website, www.theroyalassembly.org.uk. www.theroyal-assembly.org. And then again, we also have Croydon BME Forum, and they're also helping with the CAHN sessions, promoting it. Massive thanks to them and appreciation. So Croydon BME Forum, you can email them info@bmeforum.org, or you can call 020-8684-3719. And then finally, we have Black Health Initiative, BHI. If you want to contact them, you can visit their website, www.blackhealthinitiative.org, or you can call 011-3307-0300, or send an email to admin@bhileads.org.uk. So yeah, that's it for the updates. Again, massive thanks again to you, Dr. Joyce Ameh. The men on the call have heard you loud and clear. Like Charles said, we'll take it on. And yeah, thank you to everyone for joining today. Hopefully we see ourselves a week from today. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
And giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members, and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses, and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell, and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious, and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you, and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences, and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@cahn.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions. Spread the word in our community. CAHN is funded by the National Lottery Community Fund.